Hello classy people, this is Josh the Top Hat Gamer, and this week I'm reviewing ReCore. Certain names in the games industry add a level of legitimacy to projects before they're even released, and when it was revealed that Keiji Inafune and his company Concept were attached to the Xbox One exclusive ReCore, then I was confident that we'd have a winner on our hands. And then Mighty Number 9 happened. So now that it's out, does ReCore spell success? Or is it simply another missed opportunity in Concept's year? Let's take a look. ReCore is set roughly 200 years into the future, in a world where a planet-wide plague has forced what remains of the human race to look for a new home. Humanity's new home, Far Eden, is currently inhabited by corebots and machinery, all of which were sent to the distant planet in order to terraform it. The remnants of humanity remain in cryostasis, waiting for the day when they can wake to the new world. It's here that we join our hero Jewel and her corebot Mac after she's woken from stasis in order to ensure that the planet's terraforming equipment is still operational. Surprisingly, much of the planet's machinery is no longer functional, and the majority of the corebots sent to process this new world have been corrupted. It's up to Jewel to get Far Eden's facilities back online, while also investigating the cause of the corebots' apparent revolution. In terms of writing, ReCore isn't the most complex work, but it's at least somewhat unique, and it kept me interested for the entire playthrough thanks to the occasional narrative complication or twist. With that said, the story's outcome is fairly predictable, so I was never too surprised by what it had to offer. Although it may not be surprising in a narrative sense, I was caught off guard by the game's worse than average performance. Despite lacking exceptional visual quality, the game drops frames more often than I'd have liked, and I sometimes found that certain textures or even entire areas would fail to load in. And all that without even mentioning the game's often excruciatingly long load times. I had one load time noted down as around 5 minutes. It's not acceptable. With these technical gripes aside, I suppose the game doesn't look too bad, though its environments do wear a little bit thin by the end, as they only really swap between caves and open desert surroundings. To the game's credit, there is a decent assortment of enemies on offer, and the designs of the corrupted corebots are visually appealing in a very messy, mechanical sort of way. The audio design isn't quite as memorable, with serviceable voice acting and a so-so soundtrack that get the job done, but sort of just stop there. The beeping and whirring of your companion corebots serve to give them a nice level of personality, which was helped along by some fairly emotive animations, but that's all that really stood out to me. While ReCore may stumble a little bit in terms of its presentation, and its story, though entertaining, isn't very ambitious, the game succeeds pretty damn well in the gameplay department. It takes a very simple, arcade-like approach to combat and platforming that is honestly really appealing to me. Maybe it's because we haven't had a really solid arcade action game in a while, but at its core, I really enjoy the mechanics on offer. The game offers up combat and platforming sections in almost equal measure throughout its duration, and both sets of mechanics are easy and fun to pick up, and addictive as hell once you really get into them. The combat gives you a hard lock on, so your focus remains mostly on dodging enemy attacks without having to worry too much about aiming. And the game eventually adds another layer to this by giving you multiple flavors of ammo to use, allowing you to blast away at similarly colored enemies to inflict increased damage. Blasting enemies away is fun, but being able to extract enemy cores once they reach a low enough level of health is a fantastic way to reward players with a fairly satisfying, almost fishing-like minigame. Getting your combo up while fighting is also a solid incentive to have players think about how they approach battles, and getting a high multiplier will allow you to instantly extract a core from an enemy of your choosing, but you lose out on the gratifying experience of reeling the core in yourself. With that said, the instant extract is helpful in a pinch, so its inclusion is certainly worthwhile. My only gripe with the combat system is that it's easy to get overwhelmed, and the attacks of certain enemies are stupidly difficult to dodge, especially when they home in on you before inflicting paralyzing status effects that can turn your luck around in an instant. But it's not like you're completely defenseless, as Jewel is equipped with a double jump and dash that can get you out of most tight spots. Outside of combat, these skills can be used to traverse the game's fairly large world, and while there are some neat tricks you can pull off, such as dashing from a platform and then double jumping and dashing again, there's not a whole lot of progression to be had. Sure, you can gather more corebot buddies to access new areas, and these corebot abilities are sometimes mixed into the moment-to-moment platforming, but there's not a whole lot of skill involved beyond the base abilities. Speaking of your corebot buddies, they can help you out in combat, as well as the previously mentioned platforming abilities. But while they can be upgraded a little bit, the mechanics involving them lack any real depth beyond the color-coded combat I mentioned earlier. Yellow hurts yellow, blue hurts blue, you get the picture. Both the platforming and combat sections could probably use an extra ability or two to maybe add some depth, but then you risk complicating the game's simple and addictive core mechanics. On the other hand, the game is determined to drag itself out far longer than it needs to, so a bit of depth might not have hurt so much. What I mean when I say that ReCore drags itself out is that it actively locks story missions away from you until you collect a certain number of MacGuffins, much like an old school collect 'em up or any Mario game after Mario 64. Problem is, the game never presents you with enough collectibles within its core missions to let you finish the game. No, to access the end game, you'll have to scour the map and complete more side content than you'd have initially expected. Playing the game's side dungeons is generally pretty fun, as they're an assortment of combat and platforming arenas that present you with a number of sub-missions to complete as you go. But what I don't appreciate is being forced into playing this content in order to grind out more collectibles just so I can continue the story. ReCore's final stretch is a notably egregious example of this, and left a bad taste in my mouth as the credits rolled. Thanks to its flow-breaking, frustrating game design, ReCore feels too long and too short at the same time, as it lacks in main story content, and artificially pads the game's length out by forcing its side content upon you. Around the midpoint of my playtime with ReCore, I was feeling pretty positive about the game. Sure, the mechanics may lack depth and the load times were almost killing me, but I found the core gameplay to be fast-paced, fun, and highly addictive. However, as the game went on, and I found myself struggling to gather the bare minimum of required collectibles to continue, my optimism turned into frustration, and I couldn't wait for the game to be over. ReCore gets the Top Hat Gamer rating of mediocre. Its unfortunate game design made ReCore feel like a slog, but didn't sour me too much on the overall game. Sure, it wasn't a good time by the end, but there is definitely something to enjoy about ReCore's simple approach to gameplay. If you're in the mood for an action game that doesn't concern itself with being flashy and don't mind spending time collecting MacGuffins, then ReCore gets a provisional recommendation. Otherwise, don't bother with it. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the review informative. If you missed the last review on Grow Up or my top 10 most adorable game characters list, click the annotations. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go hang out with my robot puppy.